Well, hello there, everybody. It's just popping in super fast, I see. Thank you very much. My name is Shel Broadnax with Real Estate Staging Association. Thank you for joining me today with another episode of Ask the Experts. Before we get started, I want to just do some housekeeping and make everybody aware there is a Q&A box on your bottom bar or the chat box. If you have a question, go ahead and pose it in either one of those and we will watch those and we will get to them. If we know that your question might be answered in a couple slides, we'll probably hold off for that. And at the end, we can also wrap up with any other questions, but feel free to ask. In the meantime, just so I'm very sure that you see the screen and you can hear us, whoever is on, just go ahead and type how long you've been in business and what state you're located. And that way we can kind of get a sense on who's watching us. And that way Jason will be able to probably tailor make his answers a little bit more depending on where you're at in your business. Don't all do it at once. Who do we have on here?
Come on, people.
Jonna Green.
There we go.
There you go. Hey, Megan.
Saskatchewan.
Very good. Arkansas. That's where I saw my first armadillo 4.5 years ago when I drove through it to move here. And I really enjoyed Arkansas. I'm not going to lie. It was beautiful. In Toronto, been there too. 6 months. Good. New. Hey, Ellen, welcome. Costa Mesa, very nice.
Sounds lovely.
San Diego. Hey, Frank. All right, Jonna, good from San Diego. Excellent. All right, we got a good group and it's growing. So we're still
San Juan, Puerto Rico. I was just there less than a month ago. Beautiful place.
My sister lived there for a few years.
It's really nice.
What she said, she loved it.
It was special.
Really loved it. She left before they had their disaster, but let me just go ahead and introduce now. You are all here for one reason. We know what it is because it's not me. It's Jason Saft. How are you?
I think it might be you. I don't know if I would, sell yourself short there.
Well, what I can tell you this is that every time we mention your name on anything, everybody's like, oh, Jason. And I'm like, I know he's fantastic. He's going to be on the webinar. So come join us. So I think we've been kind of working up to it. So thank you for doing it. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. And again at RESACon, we'll be reunited and hopefully everybody here, especially the new people, are all coming.
Yes, definitely. If you are not registered for RESACon, get registered. There's a poll up. So go ahead and take this. We're going to do a couple of these polls throughout the webinar, make it a little bit more exciting. So feel free to take those. So Jason, if the people that don't know, Jason is a leading boutique staging firm in New York City and in Brooklyn. He's also the 2022 winner of the Best Luxury Home Stager USA, is voted by his peers at RESA. So congratulations on all that. And he was a speaker last year at RESACon. He's a speaker this year at RESACon. He just is very, very giving and has a successful business, is more than happy to give back to everybody and has great information. So thank you for doing it. And everybody, let's all wish him a happy birthday because it's his birthday today. Birthdays are fun.
When you get to this age, like it's not my birthday. Let's move on.
Do you still get a cake?
I'm getting a cake tonight. Yeah.
Good. See, I have a thing about this. I had trauma as a child because I watched that Shirley Temple movie where her mom was killed when she went to go get her cake for Shirley's 5th birthday, and the cake dumped on the street. And ever since then, it's like everybody's got to have a cake. So that's all you get, even if it's a cupcake or an Oreo. You can get away with that too. Are you ready? Let's get moving. Okay, so do you have any recommendations for invoice billing systems other than HoneyBook?
A bookkeeper. I think that's, it's interesting. There are certain things that I'm not great at, and bookkeeping is one of them. And I will tell you sorry, to take a step back, I didn't just start this business. For almost 20 years, I was sort of testing the waters with it. I was a real estate agent, but I loved designing and redoing spaces. And that was the thing that I was known for, that I did. And I kept building it, testing it, trying to figure out. And in that time period, and between my brokerage and the staging, I am terrible at bookkeeping. And so that was something from very early on that I struggled with, that I knew after getting a tax bill a couple times that I needed to budget, which is also something I'm not great with, to get a bookkeeper. And I think that's one of those things that very early on, especially with all the receipts and purchasing, that you should really think about, like having someone track your finances, but also I'm really big with systems and processes for every step and every part of what we do. Um, and that was something from early on, like before I even had a helper, I started working with a bookkeeper because I didn't have the time to get to it. It was causing problems. Um, and I knew that it needed to be taken care of immediately. And so that is something that very early on, I budgeted and planned to have a bookkeeper going, and it's really helped me grow. And part of this is, while we're all operating in our businesses in the present, I think one of the most valuable things, again, going back to systems and processes, is sort of setting yourself up for the future, right? And I I started very early on, always like looking at things of, this is not gonna always be me one day. And um, so the system and the process of the bookkeeper, it just had to become something automatic. And so that is my personal suggestion based off of my own business, my own struggles, my own time management, that we needed to do and handle and give it to them fully.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Let me tell you, business math in high school, I was into it. Figuring out a percentage on the sale, you can do it. Being a little bit dangerous within QuickBooks, I can handle that. But why? If it's not your jam and you're not into the numbers and all of that, outsource that. Find a good bookkeeper, because not only it's so important to keep your books in line, but a good bookkeeper will be able to forecast for you, and they'll be able to do those budgets. And if you work with them more like a collaborator, where you're really getting their opinion, and you want to spend some money, you should be going to your bookkeeper and saying, can I afford this? And these will be able to tell you that when you do that. We use QuickBooks. I think a lot of people use QuickBooks and HoneyBook. And I can make my way around QuickBooks, but it's got so many bells and whistles that unless you're on it all the time, you're not going to utilize everything. And so it can be difficult to learn. What platform do you use for inventory and proposals?
So right now for proposals, we are switching from standard Word documents to a prettier presentation in Canva. And that came from, it was a discussion I had with my chief of staff, but very interestingly enough, a new client of ours who I've been working with members of their team for several years, but the two leads, who are the #1 team in New York City by closed sales volume. And these guys have built this incredible business, and they love my work, and they had me walk 3 very high profile houses, and I didn't get any of them. And so whenever we don't get a project, we always ask in a very sort of, and I try and ask over the phone, not over email, because it's easy for someone not to answer. And again, for starting out, I think this is one of the most important questions you can ask in business to understand what's not working and then fix it. We always ask, like, do you know, if we're not dealing directly with the seller of the property, if we're going through the agent, we always ask, could you share any insight as to, if your decision was based on a lower price staging or someone else's aesthetic, or was there something off with our presentation? And so they came to us and said they just felt like our physical presentation was not on the level of our work. And what's interesting is, and these are the reasons we ask, we send a proposal in a Word doc, and then I have templated links that have metrics and case studies, which is a flip book of 150 projects that span 15 years, all filled with before and afters, and it's all metrics, and it's our metrics. It's not general metrics, it's not fluff. These are real case studies that we have tracked so that anyone looking at this would understand, like, we are here to help sell property, and we sell often the unsellable. So it was really interesting. They said that they don't even think the clients looked at it because they clicked on the proposal, and why are they going to go to 4 separate links? And a part of this advice is, and I sat with my chief of staff when we went through it, these agents deal with unbelievably high net worth individuals. I mean, like, it just in another stratosphere. And so we had been working on upgrading our pitch deck, but we've just been focused on spring market. So we've ramped this up to create something that fuses our pitch deck that's filled with metrics and beautiful images, and just gives the meat of what the proposal is, so that we have something that's more on brand for us.
I love that.
So that's part one. But the takeaway of that is, really think about asking questions. And if you're not getting projects, ask why, and process that information, right? Because, sometimes you're going to get something very straightforward. Sometimes there may be more to it than that. And by getting them on the phone as opposed to email or text message, you can have dialogue. And what I think is important in this, and also keep in mind, I was a real estate agent for almost 20 years. Real estate agents are always pitching their services, and they're often pitching against 4 or 5 other people. So if you have that conversation with someone who's often in that scenario, it can lead to strengthening your relationship. It almost puts you on common ground, and you can often talk together. Like, I have some agents who will say to me, I found this strategy works for me. And so I ask these questions, and we start to take pieces of it. And whenever another business leader, entrepreneur, anyone who I believe their opinion matters in business, I like to look at those takeaways and what's there. So asking those questions on your pitch decks and why maybe you're not getting projects is really important. And then, from that, coming up with a strategy. And oftentimes, you might hear we went with someone less expensive than you. And so I think that's a really helpful thing to hear. But what you have to start to figure out then is, are you going to run that company where you're just undercutting everyone, and you're not running a business? You're just trying to bring in a few projects that you're going to end up losing money on. And you have to sort of look at where you can specialize and fill that void. And so sometimes some projects, and keep in mind, I am now speaking from a place of we're probably turning down as many projects as we're taking on. And sometimes we're turning down more than we're taking on. So I'm speaking from that position, but I wasn't 5 years ago. I mean, 5 years ago, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? For every one project I got, I would say 10 I didn't get. And then you have to sort of figure out, like, where you want to be and where you want to fill that void. A lot of people just very quickly go to pricing and drop their price, and you may not be in business in a year. You have to think about that. Like, there are times where we take on jobs that maybe aren't the most financially beneficial, but I know that I can leverage it into something else. I know that it's one of 5 transactions with someone. So I think you have to have a consciousness about that and pricing. And then we often, from that, and sorry, I know this is really long-winded, but we have a tracking system for everything that goes out. And so we file everything that we don't get into a category called lost. And once a month or so, I'll sit down when I have some time. And if I don't already know who the stager is who took on the job, I'll go look through all the loss, and I'll look to see who got the job. And I can often tell aesthetically, even though New York is a big market, it's sort of a small market when you start to boil it all down. And I would say 9 times out of 10, they went with someone who is so cheap, we're not running the same types of businesses.
Yeah.
And they're often the properties that are still on market and unsold. And so that's, if I think part two of this question, which I've forgotten, is about tracking certain information
Inventory.
in inventory. And so we treat all of these things sort of similar. We really try and track and keep track of everything. And then look at it, right, from this bird's eye view a month or 2 months later to understand that decision. And what happens over time that, I saw in a lot of this, people were saying, I've been in the business 6 months, I've been in the business a year. At that point, it's hard to have perspective, right? It's just sort of
Yeah.
like, oh, fuck, I didn't get this job. Like, oh, I'm in trouble. How am I gonna, pay my kid's school? I don't know if I can pay my rent. But if you're doing everything else, 5 years, 10 years, you're able to sort of like, one, you're not taking on those jobs and you're not in that position anymore. But, the more important thing is you're able to sort of take a step back and understand like those just weren't your clients and those weren't your projects. It's always hard in the moment, but it's easier to just keep going, because then you're able to look back at it and understand why it didn't work out.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's a numbers game, just like with everything. What I like to teach stagers to do is keep a spreadsheet of your loss. Keep all your contacts that you have. Set realistic goals. So if you know you need so many stagings a month, put that on a calendar, how many it is that you need, and you do it for the month. And that's, if that's, 3 a week, then put that on the calendar. If you only get 2 the week, now you have an adjusted weekly goal, and that extra one that you didn't get goes on to the next week. But also when you're tracking people, even just talking to them on the phone, just to note who called, what they were looking for, you get to learn about what the temperature's like on your local level. And then you'll start to be able to recognize, I have to talk to 10 people and I got 1 job. And then you do that again and you do it in lots of 10. And then you say, okay, now I've gotten 2. And you just kind of up your goals that way. And there's something about seeing it that really kind of inspires you to keep moving forward. So I like that.
Yeah. And I think, one thing that I tried to move away from early on was like beating myself up about losing those jobs. It's hard to. I mean, it's scary.
Hard.
Like I don't, here in New York in this market, like some of my competitors, like they come from a well-established position. Like I just had this conversation with a client who was talking about, they asked me why I'm not doing interior design, and they reference this other firm that does interior design, and I said to them, look, like if my parents had a mansion on, Lily Pond Lane in East Hampton, I could go do whatever I want at 24 years old and just do it all. But, I've built this from scratch, from nothing over all this time. And so I do want to emphasize to everyone who's listening, like, understand some of the things I'm saying are really coming from a position of someone who's been in the industry now for a really long time. But I think 7 years ago, when I was still doing this like part-time and a little bit more as a hobby, it was a different business. Projects were coming in very differently. But then the big part of it is I made a lot of changes and focused on this solely. I left brokerage, which is, I think, getting into our next question. But sorry, someone asked the other part of that question. For inventory, we use Airtable. So Airtable is a very robust CRM project management software program. It is not that user friendly. It is not fun. It doesn't come with a gun. It has its own challenges. We've sort of built it from scratch. Like you can sort of build your own inventory system with it. But I have a team who took it over. But if there's any one takeaway, and I'll probably say this 5 times and for separate things, but for everyone who is new, whatever system you use, like whether it's Strange DNA, Stageforce, start your inventory now. Do not wait. Do not say I can't afford the $100 a month or the cost of the scanning gun. You will make one of the biggest mistakes of your professional career by doing what I did and waiting 10 years to log in your inventory, because you will get to a place where it is, 1, completely unmanageable. 2, you will have employees and you're all working from memory, and it is impossible. So it took us a little over a year to fully inventory are our inventory. So if I can just all of you, the one starting out, I'm not going to advertise for any one company. There's a bunch. Just figure out the one that you like that works for you. Start your inventory like tomorrow because
Yeah.
it's going to sneak up on you before you know it if you stay in the business. And then it will become a year-long, disastrous, very expensive problem to have.
Yeah.
And again, everything is just systems and processes. The sooner you create them, the easier it's going to be if you don't have employees to start having employees. It'll be a complete world of difference for you.
Yeah, I totally agree. What about your availability to people? I saw this question also on social media this week where somebody was talking about, agents calling after hours, and if you don't pick up the phone, has your viewpoint on this, taking calls at all nights, weekends, and everything, changed over the years? And
Yeah.
what, and
Yes.
what's
And
that?
it changes by person and it changes by day of the week. It changes by mood. It changes with like if the moon is in the seventh house. So so here's what I think you have to understand. And again, this is also 20 years of real estate brokerage. And it's interesting. My perspective on this has changed a little bit because I recently was interviewed in something and someone asked me about my first big break. And it was actually a very small, inexpensive studio apartment, but it changed the trajectory of like my life and not my career, but my life. And so when I started in real estate, there was no Zillow. There was listings came in through a fax machine still. And brokers were like gatekeepers. And so I also did not have this, like they call it a sphere of influence. I had no network and I was 30, no, 20, 27 years old or something. Um, so what I used to do, and this is when people called for apartments on in the newspaper. And so one Sunday afternoon, I happened to have to just go to my real estate office. This is like 2004, 2005. And I had to go there after hours on a Sunday, and the phone rang, and I picked it up, and this person was calling about an apartment. And his voice, it's like if he was English, he would have the most posh, beautiful accent. He was American, and he called on an apartment. And so we started talking, and I made an appointment. I showed him the apartment. And so the apartment was awful, but as we talked, he was the CFO of like a global oil tanker company who was in the middle of a divorce, who lived in one of the most expensive and prominent buildings on the Upper East Side. He wanted to move downtown at 60 and like change his life. And so I started working with him and I helped him. And it turned out he rented, it was a studio apartment. It was a very nice studio apartment, but the apartment was owned, and I didn't know this at the time, by the listing agent who was like the head of the company that I worked for. And this guy called me at 9 o'clock on a Thursday and started asking me all these questions because he found it fishy and odd that this unbelievably established person, who like clearly is much older, would just rent a studio apartment downtown. Like he felt like this was very suspect. And so he called me and I started giving him all the exact financial information, everything. And he's like, "How do you have that?" I said, "Well, I, was in the office, but I had my 3-ring binder with me and I was giving it to him and I carry my client's information." And so through this process, it turned out this guy was the head of the brokerage firm. I rented him an apartment to the most perfect client. The client referred me to all of these people. The head of the brokerage firm became the first hire of a tech startup called Urban Compass, which became Compass, which I became one of the first employees from because he and I went to have coffee to catch up. And a week later, I was one of the first employees there. And that completely changed the trajectory of like my entire life. And again, this is very long-winded, but I was in the office on a Sunday at 5 o'clock. And so when that happened, I started coming into the office every Sunday between 4 and 10 p.m. because I realized that was when very wealthy people came home from their weekend houses, picked up their newspaper in the city, and just called on these ads. And it was this strategy that worked for me. And I hadn't thought about that in a really long time. But what you have to remember is that real estate agents work on a 7-day a week schedule where there are no boundaries. Now, as my business has grown, I've established boundaries. So if someone emailed me today, they get an email that says, thank you for reaching out. I'm out installing a project, and then I have this, and please allow 24 to 48 hours for a response, because I'm managing expectations. It's also, I'm going out to dinner for my birthday, and I'm not going to have time to sit on email. But I've sort of managed the expectation that if you are contacting me, you should expect a response between 24 and 48 hours. But it also gives the contact information for my chief of staff and my warehouse. So if it's something else, they could deal with that. Now, all of this comes down to managing expectations. I often get random text messages and phone calls and all sorts of things from people that I don't know, that I don't conduct business with. And I sometimes will look at them when I have time. I give them my email and I say, I'll be responding by this time. But here's now, when I'm working with clients, and if there's something tense or we're on deadline or there's an issue, I'm available, and they know that. And I think that's part of why I have the business that I do. But most of my clients, and this is part of, and if there's questions about it, we can get into it. I target specific people that I want to work with. And I sort of go into like a client acquisition mode. And these are also very busy people. A lot of them have families. My favorite clients are parents with more than one child. Because those people are not always working every minute of the day, and they understand when you're a parent and you have a child. And so part of it is I do train my clients how to contact me. If someone contacts me about a new listing and a project, I have started to wean them away from that and just say, hey, I'm out installing. I'm not going to get to this until tomorrow or whatever. However, if you email myself and Walker, as always, they'll file it. It'll go into our CRM, and they'll prep the proposal, get it on my calendar. And so in managing the expectation, we've sort of almost gotten everyone to communicate the way that we want them to. Now, again, here's the difference: is I'm established and I'm at a point where I'm referring out and saying no to more business, or as equal as we're taking on. If you're not, then you may be responding to things if you need those projects. But there's nothing wrong with creating boundaries early on. And what you find is that some people will say, oh yeah, oh my God, it's Sunday morning at 8 o'clock. Silly me to think that you want to talk about something that could pan out in 4 months, which is something that happened to me recently. And I was like, I'm making pancakes and I'm not interested in this dialogue right now. Like, please stop texting me. But again, if you're starting out and you're not that busy, you kind of need to respond, and you need to understand that these are people that are operating businesses, that this is the way it operates. But I talk about this with my clients. I speak about it. I write about it on social media. Like, I'm trying to train some real estate agents. Like, hey, listen, just because you're operating 7 days a week, all cylinders all the time, it doesn't necessarily mean I have to. Like, we have a system, we have a process, we have hours. And so over time, you're able to shape that. Now, I have found that one of the reasons why it is happening to me, because I've asked, and this is my own issue, is I'm often working on projects late at night or on the weekends, and I'm posting about it on Instagram. So I've had some people say to me, like, of course I called you. Like, you posted a project an hour ago. You're always, I've had people say to me like, oh, you're always working, so I assume this was okay. And I hate to say this to anyone who's under the age of like 40, but I think some of this is also generational. Like, I find more and more people closer to my age, which is over 40, stick to email and stick to office hours or a little bit before, or sometimes apologize like, hey, I'm really sorry to contact you. I couldn't find your email. I just want to get on your radar. And so again, manage the expectation, but understand where you are in your business and if you need to respond to that. But if you do set up a system and a process early on, you won't have to dig yourself out of the hole 5 years from now.
Yeah, absolutely. I like little things like when people, I know a lot of real estate agents do this and some staters do it too. Please leave a message, voicemail. I'll return calls between this time and this time. That way you're managing that expectation of getting back to outbound messages on your email as well if you're unable to get to something. I think the majority of all entrepreneurs in the first so many years, everybody's hustling. I know I hustled full throttle for over a decade. Not so much
Yeah,
now. Got the
I
boundaries now.
I will say, and I don't know if this is something I'll regret in a few years, but if you're on this call and you're starting a business, like uh, the whole work-life balance thing, I don't know. Like, I think,
Good luck with that.
yeah, I think if you want to be successful in a business that's about schlepping, physical owning and schlepping and moving and doing
Pay your
all this
dues.
stuff, it's expensive. It's not like a regular job where you just like get on a computer and respond to things for hours. Like you have all of this overhead and you're in a crowd. Everyone seems to be in a crowded marketplace. So I don't know. I hate to say like good luck with that work-life balance, but
But
if
good
you
luck
want to be most really successful people, like they're just hustling and grinding until a certain
until
point.
a certain point. Yeah.
Right. And that's again, I think if you're setting that up for yourself, like my first 15 years of this were exhausting. I mean,
Yeah.
it still can be exhausting, but I live for it. Like I enjoy it was even when we were scheduling this and the dates came and they were like May 2nd, and I was like, okay, it's my birthday. Like I have an install scheduled that day, I have something else. Um, where if you're the type of person where you have that day blocked off or that week blocked off, then maybe you shouldn't have the same expectations, right? Because you want a different sort of lifestyle. And I think every person needs to sit themselves down at some point and say, okay, like I'm starting this business, I'm running this business. What kind of business do I want to have? If it's going to be insanely successful, expect that you're going to be putting in an insane amount of effort to make that happen.
Absolutely. So rewarding, but could not agree more. So let's talk upholstery.
Yeah.
Costly as purchasing new items cleaning can be. Do you maintain your upholstery? So you get them cleaned? Do you have a process for that or any thoughts or
It's
ideas?
interesting, like, and I have a lot of stuff, and I've had a lot of stuff for a long time. We very rarely have to clean anything. So
Excellent.
I'd be curious if this is someone who's doing occupied stages or something else, because I mean, look, we're very careful with things, but um, if your inventory is just for show and not for residential usage, and your team is handling it properly, um, how long would someone be sitting on a couch or a chair at an open house or a showing? So, but I stain guard all of my white boucle. Anything white gets stain guarded and wrapped a little bit more carefully, handled a little bit differently. Um, and like every once in a blue moon, we have to take home towels to wash them because they get used when people wash their hands. But I don't, we have very low upkeep because everything is for show.
Yeah. Love it. Photography.
All right,
You
let's
let's
get
get into
into this. Yeah.
photography.
Fine.
I think I might have a guess. I might be wrong. I don't know, but I would imagine. Do you take your own photos? You have
I
someone on
do.
your team.
And
Yes, I knew it.
I talk about it at my last session. I'm going to talk about it in the next one. Um, you know, from what I understand, I am one of the only people in the staging community who photographs their own work professionally, and a significant amount. When we do the year-end profit and loss, and I look at, I spend close to six figures on photography. Um, I think it is one of the most important things. Like if you're running a business about how you present property and how you market property, and you do not have your own images, there is a disconnect there. There is a problem. And so I think what everyone needs to understand is you do not legally have or own the right to utilize the agent's listing photos for your
Correct.
own commercial purposes. And so I know a lot of people get away with this. And I know a lot of people who have gotten into trouble with this. And again, especially if you're starting out, how are you going to build a pitch deck of your successes? How are you going to showcase your metrics? How are you going to build your website? How are you going to build your social media presence if you have no imagery? Um, so, I've landed in a really nice spot with this because I've become known for photography. And one of my favorite things to do is the photo shoot. And so, early on in my business, what I used to do is I would just handle the photography for the agents, and I would be there and I would style and I would set up. And, I formed these relationships with photographers. And again, keep in mind, I had already been working with these photographers when I was a real estate agent. Um, but what I started to do was I use this as an opportunity to build a network and to create sort of a strategy. And so the agents who I worked with who were not working with these photographers, who I think are the hands down the best in the industry, in New York. Their editing, the team. I know how everything operates and works, and they are without question the absolute best. And I believe it and I talk about it. And so I started getting a lot of the agents that I work with to work with these photographers. And I started to train real estate agents. And this is different in every market because here in New York, as an example, this first picture where I'm standing in the corner um, is a $14 million 8-bedroom mansion that was built in 1899. And so here in New York, and this is going to shock some people, um, this photo company, the lead photographer, 2 hours of her time gets you 6 images for $1,000.
Holy smokes.
And so now I know in a lot of other markets, it's like 5,000 photos, right? So again, this is New York. It's a little bit different. Every market is different. But, this house I ended up photographing for myself because I got it a ton of press on it and I leveraged it into other things. But I spent like $3,000 of my own money on additional images outside of what the agents did. And so over time, because I brought them so much business, um, they let me use the images um, for the projects that I do. Even if it's an agent who's been working with them for 10 years already, they're happy to because I'm tagging them on social media, I'm tagging the photographer, and every single one of them has told me without question that I have given them a beyond significant amount of business, and not just my own, but people coming to them and then people coming to them through Instagram, like the Stage Sell Home has a really large network. They're starting to get a lot of other people who just I started following you from Jason Saft, and now I want to photograph my home. I have interior designers who are reaching out to them and saying, "Hey, I have a project that's not for sale, but will you photograph this?" And so all of these things, not just limited to photography, I look at a way, can I create a network and be referring all
Yep.
of these people out, whether it's my floor refinisher, a closet builder, a videographer, a photographer, a caterer for events and open houses. And as time goes on, those are going to be your people who will, on your birthday, tell you that they're going to come do a photo shoot of your apartment, or they want to do lifestyle images for you as a gift. They're going to be the ones who are going to sponsor, a warehouse event. They're going to be the ones who are going to sponsor a talk that you're going to give on the importance of staging and presentation in a challenging market at one of your clients' listings. They're going to be the sponsor of it. So um, that is how I look at photography, is creating this huge network. And then to get to some of the other stuff, because I just keep rambling.
That's okay. That's okay. I think that stagers, you got to invest in it at some point. And a lot of stagers I know over the years, not a lot, some high profile stagers have done what you've done, and you learn how to take a really great photo and you get a nice SLR camera and you go in and you
And
can get it yourself.
in
And
my early days, I was photographing my stuff. And that was sort of what actually bonded me with these photographers,
yeah,
because I was already able to come in with an understanding of perspective and how to photograph and shoot. And I was showing them what I was doing. And it looks terrible compared to them. but everyone was like, oh my God, this is so impressive that you've just been doing this on your own. And so in the question of how do I choose a photographer is like, we just like I spend a lot of time with them. Like we're actual friends and do things
Relationships.
outside of
Yeah.
this. Yeah, because we have a real relationship. And that is something like throughout your business, you have to start figuring out and understanding like you can look at someone as a vendor or this and that, or you could say this is a relationship. And
Got to find your people. Yeah.
yeah, and do we bond
100%.
and do we connect? And all of a sudden it's these some of these issues or problems or budgets, whatever, they all dissipate because you see how it works. And then in terms of there was a question about like styling and things like that, the number one thing I do is I spend different periods of time in a home to understand when I have the best light. And then I'm there physically styling the project and I'm moving things and I'm cheating things to get those sort of like editorial images that make the property look good. And, you know, again, when you can spin this as part of your service, right? Like why someone should work with you, like maybe that's something you want to work into your pitch deck. Like for everyone who hires you to stage, you will give 2 hours of your time, and I put a value on everything, right? So like for me, that's valued at $900. Um, I would come and style the shoot and handle it for you. Now all of a sudden people are understanding like your time is of value, you're doing this, you've got this. Like I would say most real estate agents, except for the ones who love design, they don't want to be there for a photo shoot.
Right.
And this goes into sort of like how I started really building the business and the clients. I started figuring out, and again, I was an agent, what are the things I can take off their plate and put into my business and make it a service and then sell it. So if you're saying to someone that you offer that service because you've been practicing and training and you enjoy it, you may be the real estate agent may push for you over someone else because they know that that afternoon when they should be in that house, they now have to go pitch another project.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you had any like persistent challenges in your business that you at one point avoided, like you just didn't even want to mess with it, trying to fix it, and then you did fix it and it transformed your business?
I mean, I think giving up control in some ways, which like if my team was here, they would all be like laughing like cartoon villains. I think over the last few years, I've given up control, and I now have like in the last 8 months, I hired someone who designs with me and designs big projects that only I used to design. And I've trained him and I work with him and I let him sort of go and I teach him how to approach it and the methodology I have and the systems and the processes. But obviously, like I don't micromanage him, but I'm on top of every detail. And I never thought I'd be able to give up control like that. But when you have the right team and you have the right people, and interestingly enough, like this person came to me through Instagram, and one of the things he said, he's like, I love that you're always at your projects, like photographing them and doing all these details, and you present things in ways that, like, he was at a different firm. He's like, no one does that. Like, they don't even think about that. And if you're looking to hire someone who loves design and considers himself a designer, if we were to talk about hiring, like that's why someone's going to choose working for you over someone else.
Yeah.
So giving up control, and then sorry, go back one more time to the.
I think we got it. It transformed your business because now you've got
Yeah.
someone in there with you and working and it's working out.
The I will say the other thing though is the inventory. I put that off and put that off, and then we started dealing with it. And
Yeah.
I mean, I used to have to physically go to the warehouse every night. I would be there until like 1 o'clock in the morning, climbing over stuff, looking for things because we had no system. Nothing was cataloged.
Yeah. So this question, you already covered this previously when you talked about your pitch deck and your agreements when you didn't get the jobs and you'd asked about it. And then you combined everything together for your statistics and things like that. But people and data, a lot of times people are kind of afraid of the data and even collecting it and then being able to use it. Do you have just a couple quick tips for people that are just starting
Yeah,
to?
number one, don't be afraid. Like that's, look, at the end of the day, like when I have to do a client call, like one of the first things I say is like, I'm not here to talk about design. I'm not here to talk about what's pretty. Like I'm a marketing professional, and like these are strategic improvements to increase the value of your home to max out your ROI in the shortest period of time. And I just go into my numbers. And so don't be scared to collect data and information. That's what's going to separate you. That's what you need. That is why people are hiring you. No one is hiring you to make a fake bed, right? Like they're
Right.
hiring you because they want you to increase the value of their home and to get it sold as quickly as possible. So in order to do that, and again, every market is a little bit different because of data, but all of it is transparent and mostly public information. Sometimes it's hard to get. Now, part of this is the better relationship you have with the real estate agent, the more information you have access to. Um, so everything goes into an MLS, right? So you can see when it goes into contract. If some people are slow to report, every agent I work with, like we follow each other on social media. I'm often able to get half of it from there. Like I'm constantly forwarding screen grabs to my chief of staff, being like, Renwick's in contract, this is in contract, that's in contract. So we start tracking things very early on. It's when did we stage? When did it get listed? When did it go into contract? And then we just sort of ask softball questions like, hey, how has it been? What's the feedback? And so we might get an email that says, oh my God, multiple offers, well over ask, all cash offer, such and such. And so we take those notes and we put them directly into our Airtable for the card, right? Like every project has essentially a file. We'll put those notes in. And then, when they're scheduling the breakdown, we often ask, like, when are you guys closing? They'll give us a closing date. And we always just ask, like, do you mind sharing the contract price? We obviously won't publish anything until you're closed. And I would say 9.5 out of 10 people send that information right back. Every once in a while, a new client who we don't know very well, that we don't have a relationship with, says, I'd rather not say, I'm superstitious and I want to wait until closing. Now, I think one of the most important things, and this is part of what I'm going to talk about at RESACon, with building this client pipeline. In the marketing that we do, we're really putting it about the agent and their achievement. And so like those days on market, like we're putting that into our emails, we're putting that into our social media, and they're sharing it, and other agents are seeing it. So when we ask those questions, again, like nine and a half out of 10 people, they know that they're about to get some accolade, that they're about to be tagged in, that we're going to share to our people. That, look, what's the worst thing that happens? Someone congratulates them and says, congrats, you're in contract. Like this is all public information. Now, every once in a while, we work on projects where there's sensitivity, where there's NDAs, where they're public figures. And we always ask from the beginning, like, is there anything you don't want us to share or do? And they just tell us, and then that's how we operate. But I don't understand why anyone would be scared to collect data and metrics on what you're participating in. Like if you're not looking at yourself as part of the team that's getting out there, then maybe that's why
That's a
you're
problem.
scared. But if you're looking at it from the perspective of, I'm a contributed player in this, and I'm going to celebrate the broker and the property, and make it about them, you'll see a very different response.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on to warehouses. And I'm going to kind of truncate these questions so we
Yep.
can move on because
Sorry,
we're running out of time.
give me one
That's
of
okay.
like the.
We'll start going fast tips like speed dating.
Yep.
Warehouses. Any challenges you faced while
Woo.
you looking for one, and what'd you end up with? How'd you fix it?
So I moved into my warehouse less than 3 years ago. I thought there is no way I'm ever gonna fill this space. Like I'm gonna die in here one day. We outgrew it, took over a second one, and we're back to now have 17 additional storage units down the block. Um, it was scary, and I made a mistake of not taking the space that was next door that was offered to us at the time because I didn't believe I would have the business, or I didn't know, and I wish I did. Um, I think you need to take a larger warehouse that you can grow into. And the warehouse spaces that we're looking at right now would increase our footprint 3 times. And also the ceiling height is almost doubled, so we'll be able to go vertical and go up. In terms of challenges, I will say the one thing that I love about this warehouse, aside from the fact like it's really cool and it looks great and feels it's just a fun space, is We have a street front loading dock. The truck just pulls right up. There's no freight elevator. There's no one else there. There's nothing to deal with, and it's absolutely wonderful. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think the biggest obstacle is, at the time, this was in the pandemic. I made the decision to focus on staging full time. I had no financial resources to make a phone call to get, some money if I needed it from someone. I understand I could have taken out a business loan. And so I thought I was upgrading significantly. But once I got into this space and then we were able to hire more people, do more projects and have better inventory because we had some layout, the level of projects that I got are completely night and day. Like when we sit down and we review our metrics, I would say like my average job, and keep in mind this is all relative to market, so don't anyone like gasp, but I think our average project was like $11,000. And now we're up to like $30,000 is our average project. And so a lot of that came from having the space, better inventory, better system process. But now I'm sort of getting the next warehouse will be like, where am I going to be in 5 years? And can I still be in here?
Yeah, I love that. I always say bigger is always better when it comes to pickup trucks, horse trailers, and warehouses.
And men.
You said that, not me,
Yeah.
but you're not wrong. You're not wrong. It's all right. So your staging style is really noticeably unique, very distinct personality, and tells a story. What inspires you to be so bold with your designs? Because they're really, when you look at these, they're just like so
Yeah,
great.
thank you. I always wanted to design, right? And so this is a later in life career. This is something I wanted to do since my childhood that I put off. I get this question a lot from people, and it comes up a lot at RESA when I see everyone. And I get messages from people on Instagram who are like, I wish I could do this in my market. I can't do this in my market. Here's the thing, like, I'm in a market where I can design like this, right? And so keep in mind, like, I'm in New York City. It's chock full of interior designers. Every design publication is here. People have a lot of money. I can do things very differently because that works in this market. But every market, I don't care where you are, has an elevated design ethos, right? And so it might take time to get there. It might take time to find it. It might take time to have the inventory to buy it. Like I'm profitable, but I'm not as profitable as I should be because I've been investing in the inventory that I want to have to create these looks that are what I believe is what I want to put out into the world and the business I want to have. And obviously that will change as time goes on, but I'm conscious of where I live and who the people are that are buying these properties and what their tastes are. And I design to that. And I think if you take that and translate that to your market, you will absolutely be able to elevate the style into something that you think is more current, or that I guess is like, I think at the core what we're saying is like the association of staging style. I've moved away from it, or it's just different. And that it comes with time and experience, but understanding your market and what kind of business you have. Like if I just wanted to have a standard staging company and be doing standard projects and doing cheaper projects, and then I would just be doing what everyone else is doing, but that's not what I want.
Yep. Awesome. Love it. Do you look before you take on a client of a new
Yes,
broker? Do you look at their success rate?
absolutely. 1,000%. And I often will turn down jobs where I don't think the project will sell. I have a business that's based on metrics, right? So if I'm taking on, I can only take on so many projects, but if I take on, and again, we live in a city where there's these like phantom owners, like there are people who just buy these $10 million apartments to get money out of their country and put it in an investment here, right? And so if I'm doing those projects and they look really great and they're really nice and the views are really spectacular and the doormen are really friendly, I'm going to have a business that's known for just like making beautiful, expensive apartments look more beautiful. And a lot of them do not sell or take a year to sell, but I am consciously going for projects that I think, like today on my birthday, I worked on this project that it reminded me of it was a one-bedroom apartment that a rental tenant was in that like I described it to my helper today as before they walked in the door. When I walked in the door 3 weeks ago, it was like when you find an abused, abandoned animal chained to like a chain link fence and it's been outside starving for like a month. And it like this apartment was so beat up and it was just abused. And so we redid the floors, we painted, changed out the lighting, and we went in 4 hours and gave it a fresh new. I would much rather do that project than work on, some beautiful investment property that will take a year to sell, regardless of what's done to it.
Very well. Where do most of your leads originate from? And the fact that you've been an agent as well, does that help you along the way in getting new leads?
1,000%. Yeah.
Speaking the language.
So a lot of my business is word of mouth. It's people who have been in my projects. I do a lot of events and I meet a lot of people. And then through Instagram is probably the number one generator of new clients.
Love it. RESACon, building your client pipeline.
Let's do it.
Let me tell y'all.
What were those? Where are those metrics? Here we go. Who's not sure?
We've got, if you are on the fence about coming to RESACon, we just did a poll here. Felicia, I think I can share it from here. If not, you guys will take over if everybody can see it. I don't know if it's supposed to be on my screen for them to see it or if they can see it alone. But RESACon, 1 out of the 10 is coming. 3 are not sure. 6 of you are not this year. We got to get to it. Get it on.
I mean, look, I should say I didn't go for many years. And then after, I mean, you guys got me through the pandemic, right? Like it was also when I started taking my business really serious, but I came to understand how valuable the organization is in probably the worst time imaginable.
It's rough, yeah.
And then I got to go in person. I think like that one class alone on like managing finances and taxes was like, it didn't even just like cover the cost, but like I feel like RESACon's an investment and I got a significant return on it, like without question.
Awesome.
So for all of you who aren't sure, it's invaluable what you will learn, and just the money saving stuff alone in those classes and sessions is like just it pays for the trip in spades.
Absolutely. And then also just your side conversations with people at lunch and in dinner and in between and on breaks. And I always tell people, if you're on the fence about going, jump off the fence and go. The number one thing when we hear feedback from RESACon and people say, you know what, I didn't go for years. I didn't go to year 3 or 4. Now that I went, I was like, what was I thinking? Why didn't I go year 1? You could just cut so much learning. You can shorten your learning curve, basically, is when you're coming to something like this. And the connections that you make will also last you a lifetime. So here's some information on RESACon, resaconvention.com. You can also do the virtual add-on. So after RESACon, when we come back, all of our speakers are going to redo their sessions in webinar format. And then you can catch the ones that you weren't able to physically sit on. It is held at the beautiful M Resort. It is off downtown. It is up the road a little bit, but it takes less time to get here than it does to any place in downtown Vegas due to the traffic. And there's no riffraff, and it's absolutely amazing. And the M Resort, our food is just to die for. All of our meals, your meals are the breakfast and a lunch, and we have a dinner, and then breakfast and lunch the next day. Really great food.
Can I give one more plug? Because there's something really big. That is so Luann Nigara is like my idol. I'm upset. I talked about her in my last year's presentation about continuing education and the stuff I learned, and especially like starting a business, but having no roadmap and not knowing. So I am over the moon excited that Luann is going to be there.
Oh, she is. And she's going to be presenting
I know.
a keynote, and she's going to do the awards with me.
I know.
Have you ever met Luann?
She did to celebrate like the podcast or something. She did a talk. And so I went to bring her flowers because I cannot explain how much listening to that podcast helped me. I mean, I used to, again, it's not that long ago that I was starting out. And I remember all the time I used to say like, how do I find this person? And where's this? And how do I do that? And who's this? And where are all these people? And and one day I just stumbled on the podcast a couple of years ago. And it's funny how I was saying to you on Sundays when I like that one Sunday a month when I don't talk, I sit in my apartment and I usually will listen to like 8 or 10 of the podcasts. And I've reached out to people, I work with people from it. There are friends who have been on it, but I cannot think of a single thing like professionally that I have learned more from than her podcast. So when I saw that she was coming, I was like just beyond excited.
Yeah. Well, we've got another surprise for you, but I'm going to let Felicia share the idea that we were talking about yesterday. Felicia, you can get with Jason. I kind of want to just tell him now, but I know she's going to want to tell you. But we've got a surprise for you about
Oh my God.
Luann.
If Luann sings me happy birthday right now, I'll lose my mind.
Oh, Luann, come on, let her on, Joanna.
Like Marilyn Monroe.
I'll do that.
Done.
No, but I think you're going to love it. I think you're going to love it. So we just came to this decision last night and we're like, okay, so Felicia's like, yeah, I'm glad, all capital letters here. I'm glad you're letting me. So she'll get with you on that particular surprise.
Oh
So
my God.
a
All
couple
right.
things, and we're 1 minute over, but if we can, how many questions do we have left? We have a couple. Let me get through this things first. We've got professional development webinars every single month and these Ask the Expert. So get on the distribution for those. And if you have not had any education, formal education in training in staging, and you want to, check out our accredited providers. We've reviewed their programs, their policies, their procedures, even their fiscal soundness, and put our stamp of approval on them. We also have a lot of CE classes and niche classes as well. And check those out. There's lots of great stuff. Lots of new people that have come on, Marianne Cherico, Michelle Minch, and Show Simply Learning Studio, and Occupied Staging Specialist. So check all of that out. All right. It's also embedded on the landing page. So excellent. So what I want to ask you here, have you ever run out of inventory? And how did you manage that?
Go out and buy it. You just run wherever the hell you gotta go. I mean, here's the thing, like especially the early scrappier days, and I teach this to my team, like I would say 50% of the time when you run out of something, you have something else that will take its place. Number two, just remember, like, this is theater, right? Like, you're not setting up, they're not coming home to have Christmas dinner, and the extended family is coming for the first time. And there is almost always a way and a hack to figure out something. And when there's not, like Amazon, Target, Kmart, like there's always a place to find something. Your own home. I mean, I came home once and slept on my mattress on the floor because we needed a bed.
There you go. Do you do any occupieds?
Yes, only for there's 2 qualifiers, celebrities.
Okay.
And I did Bon Jovi's apartment. And for 5, so in Airtable, all of our clients are ranked, so that when we send out gifts and other things, I can just say pull all the 5 stars, pull all the 4 stars, pull the 3 stars. We only do them for 5-star clients when they need it. And I talk about it with them, and I would say 9 times out of 10, and again, I'm in a very different market, but it's often people who have a lot of money, who bought a beautiful house, who an interior designer came and did it, and there's nothing on the walls, there's nothing on the cabinets, we often just show up with a truck that I've spec'd out the space. The truck stays there all day. It's like a mobile warehouse, and we just, with a team of 8, as many people as I can have, we attack the house and we're out before 5 o'clock.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Here's one. Do you recommend doing vacant staging in today's market where many stagers are going out of business and putting all their inventory for sale? Yeah, I do. Do it.
Listen, everything depends on the other person, and you never know what is happening, right? So if you've seen 3 people go out of business, did they not have a bookkeeper? Did they not start tracking their inventory? Did they go out of business because they didn't have their heart in it and they didn't want to do it? Did they go out of business because their partner got a job somewhere else and they moved cross country? So I don't, like, my business took off in the pandemic, and the only reason I got through it is a events company was going out of business, and I basically bought all of their inventory, and that was my infusion of inventory to take on all these projects when I couldn't get inventory because of delays. I wouldn't compare yourself to anyone because you have no idea what is going on the other side. And again, if those people are leaving the market, then there's your opportunity to take on the market. But I do think while I wouldn't compare myself, I would really do a deep dive into their work and maybe even call them and ask them why they're not in the business anymore. Again, if you come off as a nice person who's trying to be helpful and they're they were in your shoes 5, 10 years ago. If you say, hey, like I'm starting out, I'm just curious why you're leaving. Like, can I buy you a cup of coffee? Can we talk? Most people will tell you why, and you might get a response that surprises you. That's not what you think it is. But
Exactly. And it's also a great
again,
opportunity to pick up inventory if someone's going to go out.
it's a great opportunity to pick up inventory, but I find in any industry, not just specific to staging, that when you're seeing other people leave the industry, those are people who should not have been in it, who maybe don't have the chops to run a business, who don't have the thick skin, who don't have the know-how. And again, I hate to like, not to keep harping on it, and I have no association with it, but this is where like the going to RESACon, being a part of these things, like the more and better understanding you have of how to structure a business, how to run a business, how to operate a business, how to hire in a business. I think that if you have that fear of, am I going to be this person, that's trying to sell off all their inventory? Why am I going to start this? When you're learning how to run and grow a business like holistically and deeply, I don't have those fears because I
Right.
know I'm learning how to run a business.
Right.
And I look at those people who are leaving it and I can understand. Sometimes I've talked to people for 10 minutes and I'm like, okay, I got it. Like you're not cut out for this. It's not, I mean, listen, none of this is easy. Like this is operating, owning any business is so challenging, and especially one that is dealing with physical inventory being brought from location to location in a cutthroat business that's like under attack right now. We're all reading about everything that's going on in the press. So I think if you approach it with that understanding, you'll have a different relationship within the industry.
Yep. You nailed it. Jason, thank you so much for
Yeah,
thinking
my pleasure.
I want
Thank
you
you,
to get on with
everybody.
your amazing birthday dinner. Have a great time tonight. For everybody else, again, if you are on the fence about getting to RESACon, it'll be one of the best investments that you can make into yourself and into your business. Go to resaconvention.com, and pretty soon we're going to be launching voting for the awards. So stay tuned for that coming up as well. Until next time, everybody, happy birthday, Jason, again, and
Thank
happy
you.
staging. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Bye, Shell.